They can't just take your dock, man. That was the first thing my brother Evan said when I called him in a panic. But the paper in my hand said otherwise. It was a bright Saturday morning, one of those crisp, lakefront days where the water is glass and the world feels quiet, when a thick white envelope sat taped to my boathouse door, stamped with the HOA's logo. Bold red letters across the top read, "Mandatory Removal Notice." My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Inside, the letter stated that according to an updated covenant interpretation, my dock, the dock my father and I rebuilt with our own hands, was illegally extended onto HOA-claimed shoreline. They were demanding I demolish it within 30 days or the HOA would seize the structure and reassign the boat slips. Reassign? As in give my 2 family slips to someone else? I felt my jaw tighten. "This is insane," I whispered to myself, crumpling the letter in my fist. That dock had been ours for nearly 30 years. Before the HOA even existed, I marched straight to the HOA office. The building smelled like fresh paint and old attitude. Behind the counter sat Marlene, the board president. Her smile was the kind that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Nathan," she said, folding her hands. "I had a feeling you'd show up." "You can't do this," I said, tossing the notice onto her desk. "This dock is on my property. My deed includes riparian rights. You know that." Marlene raised one perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Our survey says otherwise. The board voted last night. You've been in violation for years without realizing it." I leaned forward. "My family's owned that shoreline since the 70s. This HOA came in 2001. You can't just create rules and rewrite property lines." Her smile sharpened. "We're not rewriting anything. We're enforcing order. Your dock extends 28 feet into common use water. It must be removed." I felt the heat rise up my neck. 28 feet is exactly what the county permits, and I have the original shoreline map to prove it. Marlene slid the notice back toward me. "Then I suggest you bring all that to the hearing next Thursday. You have 5 minutes to make your case. 5 minutes. 30 years of history. 5 minutes to keep everything." When I left the office, my legs felt weak. The lake that normally calmed me now looked like a battlefield. My father's voice echoed in my head, his gravelly laugh, the way he'd said, "A man's dock is his handshake with the water." He'd passed away 5 years earlier. Losing that dock felt like losing him again. That night, I spread every document I owned across my kitchen table. Deed maps, county permits, tax statements, old photos of my dad drilling boards into place. It felt like preparing for war, and maybe I was. As I stared at the paperwork, one thing became painfully clear. The HOA wasn't just trying to take my dock. They were testing whether I knew my rights, and I wasn't about to fail. I barely slept the night before the hearing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the HOA board sitting behind their long table, smirking like they already owned my dock. By morning, my nerves felt like loose wires sparking in my chest. The hearing room was packed. I didn't expect that. Neighbors lined the walls, whispering as I walked in. Some offered tight smiles, others avoided eye contact. Rumors had spread fast, and apparently everyone wanted to see the showdown. At the front sat the board, Marlene in the center, arms crossed like a queen guarding her throne. To her right was Jim, who always looked like someone forced him to be there. On the left was Carol, who once complained my dock lights were too cheerful. I set my binder on the podium. My hands shook, but I forced them still. Marlene cleared her throat. "Nathan Collins, you have 5 minutes to present your defense regarding your dock's encroachment upon HOA-controlled shoreline." I leaned into the mic. "Let me stop you right there. I'm not defending myself. I'm correcting your mistake," a few people in the back murmured. Marlene's smile thinned. I opened my binder and held up a faded but legible map. "This is the 1974 original shoreline deed. My father purchased this land along with riparian rights extending 50 feet into the water. That includes the exact area where my dock sits today." Jim squinted. "How do we know that map's valid?" "Because," I said, flipping to the next page, "the county registrar stamped it. And here," I held up a current screenshot, "is the county's online plot record showing the same boundary." A couple of neighbors nodded. Carol frowned down at her papers as if hunting for something she had missed. "But," Marlene said slowly, Our survey shows you've exceeded the community dock limit. Your survey, I said, was taken from the HOA's artificial shoreline measurement, not the legal deed line. You're treating water levels as permanent land boundaries. They're not. Water fluctuates. Rights don't. That landed like a punch. Even Jim sat straighter. I took a breath. My dock has existed in its current footprint for decades. You all know it. You've paddled past it every summer. My father and I rebuilt it by hand. You don't get to rewrite its history just because someone on the board wants more boat slips. Someone whispered, "He's right," and it wasn't quiet. Marlene tapped her pen sharply. This isn't about slips. It's about compliance. I met her eyes. Then comply with state law. Riparian rights supersede HOA policies. Here, I placed the statute on the table, is the exact law confirming that property owners maintain exclusive use of the water adjacent to their land unless surrendered in writing. I've never surrendered mine. The room fell silent. A heavy, uncomfortable, truth-filled silence. Marlene flipped through the documents, her face tightening. We will review this and reconvene. No, I said calmly. The law is clear. The hearing ends. Here? For the first time all morning, I felt the room shift like the crowd was leaning my way. The board looked cornered, and they knew it. 3 days passed after the hearing, each one dragging slower than the last. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt in my chest. I kept walking down to the dock. Running my hand along the railing, my dad and I sanded together. I didn't know if this would be the last week it stood. On the 4th morning, a new envelope appeared in my mailbox. Same crisp paper, same HOA letterhead. But this time, the red ink was gone. I tore it open right there in the driveway. After review of submitted documents and state law, the board acknowledges that Mr. Collins' dock falls within legally protected riparian boundaries. All removal orders are hereby revoked. My knees actually felt weak. I laughed, half relief, half disbelief. I'd won. I kept every slip, every board, every inch of shoreline my father entrusted to me. But the letter wasn't signed by Marlene, it was signed by Jim. Confused, I jogged down to the lake. Word must have traveled fast, because a few neighbors were already gathered near the shoreline, pretending to stretch or adjust kayaks while sneaking looks at me. Marlene emerged from behind the boathouse, arms folded. Well, she said stiffly, looks like your documents checked out. I took a calm breath. They didn't just check out, they were the law. She narrowed her eyes but didn't argue. For the first time, she looked smaller, like the authority she wrapped around herself no longer fit. Jim walked over, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I voted to drop it. It never should have gone this far. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Behind us, an older neighbor named Paul called out, Good on you, Nate! Someone had to stand up to them. Others echoed in agreement. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The mood shifted, not just relief, but recognition. People realized they didn't have to be powerless. Marlene took in the murmurs and walked off without another word. Stepped onto the dock, letting the boards creak beneath my boots, breathing in that mix of water and cedar. For the first time in weeks, the lake felt peaceful again. And then it hit me, not just relief, but something deeper. My father used to say, rights aren't real unless you know you have them. I'd always brushed it off as one of his many dad-isms. But standing there, looking at the quiet water he loved so much, I finally understood. People think HOAs run everything. They don't. The law still matters. History still matters. Your voice still matters. I turned back toward my neighbors and said, loud enough for them to hear, if anyone else is getting pushed around, I'll help you look at your documents. No one should lose what's theirs just because someone in a meeting wants more control, Paul chuckled. Guess you're the shoreline lawyer now. Maybe, I said.